I don't care how much you've learned.
I want a life filled with honor, like an Elbaf warrior.
Ha ha ha! I see.
But it does contain the unstoppable Exodia.
Ah yes, Saturday morning cartoons. They were great fun, weren't they? If you're 10 years old, there's no better way to start your weekend off. When I was a kid, my favourite show was Spider-Man, even if the channel I was watching it on never got around to actually airing the last episode. You know who else loved cartoons? These two kids. Their names are Steven and Rebecca Sugar. Fast forward to 2010, Adventure Time hits the airwaves, and it's pretty good. Oddly enough, it seems to have quite a large fan base outside of the demographics you'd expect. There are lots of teenagers and adults who love the show. Those kids who used to love watching cartoons grew up into adults who still like to watch cartoons, but now they were in charge of making them. This was the start of the Cartoon Network renaissance. The next few years would see Cartoon Network greenlight a number of critically acclaimed cartoons, including a groundbreaking show called Steven Universe. Let's go back to Rebecca Sugar. She was hired as a storyboard revisionist on Adventure Time during its first season, and thanks to her impressive work, she was soon promoted to a fully fledged storyboard artist. She wrote a bunch of songs for the show too.
Let's go in the garden. You'll find something waiting right there where you left it, lying upside down.
1 year after airing the first episode of Adventure Time, Cartoon Network were looking for new show ideas, so Sugar pitched hers. The plan was to raise the bar for storytelling in children's cartoons, to discuss themes that you simply wouldn't see anywhere else in that medium. It would have the messages you'd expect about love, friendship, family, and stuff like that, but would also tell stories about more mature themes, like identity, or trauma, or prejudice. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. At this point, she didn't even know what to call it yet, so she took the name from one of the cartoons she used to watch, Tenchi Universe, and stuck her brother's first name in there instead. The rest of the team liked it, so the name stuck, and the main character would be called Steven Universe. The pilot episode was so well received that they didn't even have to finish making it before a full season was ordered.
Garnet. Amethyst. Pearl.
And Steven!
Steven Universe is a coming-of-age story about a 13-year-old boy who is half human and half gem, a mysterious species with magical powers. He lives in a small seaside town called Beach City with a group of gem guardians called the Crystal Gems, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl. They act as Steven's mentors, preparing him to join the team as they go on magical missions to fight monsters and protect the Earth. Over the course of the show, we see Steven learn exciting and often dangerous new gem powers. We see him grow as a person along with the Crystal Gems and the residents of Beach City, and we learn about how the Crystal Gems ended up protecting Earth from magical threats in the first place. While each 11-minute episode delivers a small, self-contained story, it also stealthily drops information about the history of the gems, slowly building up a picture of who they really are. The show takes place strictly from Steven's point of view, so if there's something the gems are hiding about their past, we don't get to see it until Steven figures it out. And, like Adventure Time, the characters aren't afraid to burst into song every now and then. There's even a full-on musical episode at one point. Basically, it's about Steven growing from an annoying kid who's constantly getting into trouble into an actual crystal gem, helping to save the world from bigger and bigger threats.
No! This can't be happening! This has to be a dream!
I'm sorry, Steven. I guess they stopped making them.
Can't stop. Going to form.
But it doesn't help that everyone keeps comparing Steven to his late mom, Rose Quartz, since he has her gem and all the magical powers that come with it. Everybody liked Steven's mom, especially Pearl. Pearl really liked Steven's mom.
What was Mom like?
She was courageous and brilliant and beautiful. Everything I ever did, I did for her. Now she's gone. but I'm still here. Sometimes I wonder if she can see me through your eyes. What would she think of me now?
She hasn't quite gotten over the fact that Rose chose this guy over her. But beyond that, Pearl fought as a soldier in the war to save Earth several thousand years ago. Before the war, she was a slave, and she's probably a bit too nostalgic for her old home. She's usually the person telling Steven about how awesome gem culture was when they were still hanging around on Earth. Pearl is definitely the most mom-like of the crystal gems, as opposed to...
Amethyst! 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 Oh, go!
Amethyst is more like a big sister to Steven. She's relatively young, for a gem at least, and hasn't experienced their culture firsthand, so she's as much of an Earthling as Steven is. While Pearl is cautious and calculated, Amethyst is reckless and irresponsible, and thus the two of them are constantly at each other's throats. At least until they need to get their act together and behave as a team. And when we get to episode 40...
I'm not gonna let you stand there and remind me of everything I hate about myself! I never asked for it to be this way. I never asked to be made.
Can someone please give Amethyst a hug? Finally, we have Garnet, the leader of the Crystal Gems, with the power to see into the future, but like in a restricted way so that it doesn't break the plot. She can predict what might happen, but doesn't know for sure what will happen. And while she doesn't usually show a lot of emotion, simply telling the gems what they need to do next, we can see that it affects her when things don't work out. Not to mention the occasional outbursts of love and affection.
Oh, Steven, there's one more thing I had to mention.
What is it?
I love you. Bye.
See you later.
But, of course, we can't talk about Garnet without mentioning... which gave us one of the best songs in the whole series.
Stronger than you.
This episode, at the end of season 1, is when people really started to notice the show. It also marks a significant change in tone. Steven isn't some annoying kid goofing around in Beach City anymore, he's a crystal gem, fighting monsters and protecting humanity. The episode also gave us some recurring gem villains, so the story shifted into learning more about what makes the villainous Gem Society so different from the crystal gems we've come to know and love. Plus, there's a new intro.
We'll always find a way.
That's why the people
of this world
believe in.
It was becoming clear that one of the show's core values was representation, and nothing made this more obvious than the introduction of two gems called Ruby and Sapphire. But to understand the motivation behind those two characters, there's something else we have to talk about. Flashback to 2009. Rebecca Sugar isn't quite working for Cartoon Network just yet, but she is in a relationship with Ian Jones-Quartey, who ended up contributing a lot to Steven Universe before making his own show, OKKO Let's Be Heroes. It was around this time, when the couple went for a walk outside their home, that they were suddenly attacked. The assault was motivated partially because of the interracial relationship, but also by homophobia, as the attackers mistook Sugar to be male. Thankfully, there was no lasting physical damage. However, the trauma resulting from this attack would start to manifest itself later, during the production of Steven Universe, and Sugar would begin to experience panic attacks. Ruby and Sapphire are two females in a romantic relationship who have to run away from home because their culture thinks that rubies and sapphires aren't supposed to mix. Their entire plotline is a response to that attack, and to an extent, the whole show is a response to that attack. This, as well as Sugar's experiences as a bisexual non-binary woman, is the reason why there is so much representation in the show, and that doesn't stop at LGBTQ representation. The show also features characters who are non-binary, at least one character is coded as being on the autistic spectrum, and various characters have different types of disabilities as well, just to name a few examples. This even extends to the designs of the characters. Just look at how the crystal gems have completely different body types. Not to mention how the show rejects every gender stereotype it can get its hands on. Even though it's supposed to be a boys' show, most of the characters are female, and Steven doesn't seem to mind that his signature colour is pink. But Steven Universe isn't just a show that happens to have heaps of representation. Steven Universe is, to a significant degree, a show about the experience of receiving hate for what you are or who you love. And it manages to tell that story without losing the sense that there is still hope to be understood and accepted. Surely no one would take issue with that. Oh, right, not everyone is as woke about this sort of thing as you or I. In particular, there are lots of territories that Cartoon Network likes to sell their shows to who don't appreciate strong LGBTQ themes in their children's programming. A show like that will definitely get censored or banned in those territories, and that means losing a big chunk of revenue. Making a show that prominently featured a gay relationship would have been seen as a terrible idea financially, which is why they didn't mention any of those themes at all when they pitched the show. In the end, it was censored in some regions, and in Kenya it was straight up banned, but this was only after a whole season of the show had aired, and by that point, it was very clear that the audience loved the show. Obviously, the representation was a big deal, but let's not forget about those deep and complex characters too. For example, let's look at the episode Future Vision, where Steven learns about Garnet's ability to predict the future. At first, Steven enjoys hearing about the different predictions of how his day might go, but he also learns about all the low-risk, mundane ways that he could get seriously hurt. He becomes paranoid and eventually ends up standing on the roof in the middle of a thunderstorm just because Garnet told him not to do it.
Why did you tell me about Future Vision? What's going to happen to me on the roof?
This.
What?
I knew you might do this if I told you about my power. I saw this, and I told you anyway.
But why?
I took a risk at your expense. There was a chance you'd understand this and we'd be closer. Steven, I see so many things that can hurt you. I should never have let one of them be me.
This moment tells us everything about who Garnet is as a person. Her future vision means she's in the best position to make the team's decisions, but she also blames herself if she makes the wrong call. After all, she should have seen it coming, right? Even something that seems harmless, like explaining her powers to Steven, can mean putting him in danger, and she is always fully aware of the ways that she might accidentally hurt the people she loves. So yeah, that's the reason she doesn't talk that much. Steven's paranoia in this episode is relatable though, and that's another place where the show's writing really shines. Moments like Lars trying to fit in with the cool kids, Connie dealing with her super strict parents, or PD's disillusionment of his 9-to-5 job actually address real situations that the audience might have to deal with. There are loads of these moments, and I think everyone watching this video could probably find one of these that speaks to them. I could keep going on and on about this, but I think you get the idea. The writing's good. And I can't talk about the show's positives without mentioning how good it looks and sounds. Look at how many frames of animation that teardrop gets. I dare you to find a better animation of someone crying. The backgrounds, which Steven Sugar himself worked on by the way, look fantastic. Really, the whole show looks amazing. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack. Each character has their own unique instrument that comes in when they're on screen, and you know what? I'm just going to link to the soundtrack on YouTube. Go check it out there. And okay, I will admit, it is kind of annoying when interesting stuff happens off screen, and we don't get to see it because Steven wasn't there. And some of the Beach City episodes don't really have anything going for them, I guess. And I get why someone might find the inconsistencies between different storyboarders annoying, but for the most part, this show is just incredibly well made. This put Cartoon Network in a weird position. They now had this show that was really popular, but also heavily featured themes that they didn't want to emphasize. And I should point out here that downplaying LGBTQ representation in order to make their products more acceptable to foreign markets is not unique to Cartoon Network. There are tons of examples of movies or TV shows including gay representation in a small, throwaway scene so that they can easily remove it later, just in case there's a threat they're going to lose money over it. So the show continued to do well, it still featured all the representation it had come to be known for, and Cartoon Network started to send the writers notes. They did not want the show to make a big deal about a lesbian relationship. This was fine. But this sort of thing? Well, that was a little inappropriate. But eventually, when Rebecca Sugar and Ian Jones-Quartey got engaged, they decided that Ruby and Sapphire should be able to get married too. Cartoon Network weren't convinced easily, and the episode had to have a big fight scene added to it to convince them it would appeal to boys, but in the end, they allowed it. Cartoon Network changed their policy, the bigoted notes stopped coming, and Steven Universe would feature the first gay wedding on children's television. I mean, come on, this is adorable. How could you say no to this? Then, with about 4 seasons of planned storylines left, Cartoon Network cancelled the show. The writers did get a bit of time and a few extra episodes to wrap everything up, but this still left them in a mad rush to resolve as much as possible so that they could still deliver a satisfying ending. To make matters worse, it was never even announced that this was the end of the show, which left fans confused and disappointed about the storylines and potential character arcs that were suddenly dropped. Pretty much all the reviews of the last episode talk about how it totally would have worked as the last episode of the show, because they were still expecting at least one more season. It's actually really funny to look back at those comments now. But hey, at least Cartoon Network did greenlight a straight-to-TV epilogue movie. But then they thought, what's the point of a TV movie without some episodes for it to promote? So they also greenlit an epilogue series to the epilogue movie called Steven Universe Future.
Quiet! The ship is going down!
What about Lapis?
There's no time!
Anyway, let's go to the movie!
And if you think that suddenly cancelling the show, then immediately asking for more episodes as soon as they finished writing the ending, makes no logical sense whatsoever, I would agree with you. Just look at how they announced this to a fanbase that was still expecting a 6th season of the original show.
I'd just like to say, I know everybody has been waiting for more information about Steven Universe Season 6. But I have to tell you that there is no Season 6. But there is a Steven Universe Epilogue Limited series.
It would have been nice to see those other 4 seasons, but at least we did get a satisfying ending to Steven Universe, even if it feels a little rushed. And the epilogue series does do a good job of addressing any remaining unanswered questions. Apart from this box, it gets opened off screen, we never see what was inside. What was in the box, Rebecca? So that's Steven Universe, the product of a studio that was quickly learning to value a more mature audience, a creative team that wanted to make positive change in their medium, and a fanbase that was longing for a cartoon that truly represented them. And if the show's goal was to push the medium of children's cartoons forward, in terms of mature storytelling and LGBTQ representation, it's hard not to say that it was a success. Even outside of the other Cartoon Network shows that have aired since, we can see other children's cartoons following in Steven Universe's footsteps. Is it a goofy children's cartoon about an annoying 13-year-old? Yes. Is it well made and enjoyable to watch? Definitely. Does it also tackle some really important themes that children especially need to hear about? Absolutely. I think people are going to keep watching, discussing, and being inspired by this show for a very long time. I know at least I am.